Welcome to the channel for another exciting video. Most people who watch our videos are not subscribed, so I kindly ask you to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new content. Your like is crucial for YouTube to understand that this content is relevant, so please like, share, and leave your comment. Now let's get to the story. Jake and Emma were immersed in the excitement of renovating the old house they had purchased on the outskirts of a small town in the rural United States. It was a weathered wooden structure, with windows framed by faded curtains and a garden that seemed to have been forgotten for years. The couple had always dreamed of having their own space, and now, with their hands on the tools, they were determined to turn that place into a cozy home. "Look at this wall. I bet if we take it down, it will open up an amazing space for the living room," Jake said, with a sparkle in his eyes while holding a sledgehammer. Emma smiled, full of enthusiasm. "Absolutely. Let's do it right now." With a firm blow, Jake struck the wall, which burst into a cloud of dust. Emma laughed, holding her nose. "Careful. I don't want you to suffocate me with that dust." After a few minutes of intense work, the wall began to give way, revealing a dark cavity. Jake stopped, his expression of excitement transformed into curiosity. "Hey, look at this." He cleared away the rest of the wall, and what was revealed was an old safe, covered in rust and with a lock that seemed to have been forgotten for decades. "I wonder what's inside?" Emma asked, approaching cautiously. The dust seemed to dance around them, as if the very air was curious about what was about to be discovered. "Let's find out," Jake replied, already crouching down to examine the safe. The metal surface was worn, and the lock looked like a relic from the past, almost as if it had been waiting for them. "We need a key, or maybe a way to open it." Emma looked around, searching for something that might help. Do you have any idea how we can do that?" Jake frowned, his mind racing with possibilities. "Maybe we can use a tool, or something like that." He stood up and went to the toolbox he had brought. Meanwhile, Emma couldn't take her eyes off the safe, as if an invisible force was pulling her towards it. "Jake, don't you think this is a bit strange? An old safe hidden in the wall of a house?" Emma asked, her curiosity turning into slight concern. "It's just a safety, Emma. It could just have some old stuff, or maybe money. Let's open it," Jake replied, trying to project confidence. He grabbed a screwdriver and started working on the lock while Emma watched, restless. After several frustrating attempts, the safe finally opened with a click, revealing its contents. What was inside, however, was not what they expected. Emma took a deep breath as Jake carefully pulled out the items. At the bottom of the safe was a black and white photo of a woman with a sad look. The image was yellowed with age, but the intensity of the woman's gaze seemed to transcend the decades. "Who do you think this woman is?" Emma whispered, taking the photo with trembling hands. "She looks so lost." Jake continued to rummage through the safe and soon found a stopped clock, its hands still marking 3:17. "And this clock? It's broken, but it's intriguing." He held it, observing the details of the object. "Why would someone keep a clock like this?" Emma frowned. "It's as if time stopped, at that hour." A premonition began to grow in the back of her mind, but she tried to push those thoughts away. Jake then found a small key covered in dirt. "Look at this, a key. Do you think it can open something else?" "Maybe. But where do you think this key leads?" Emma replied, her heart racing with the feeling that they had unleashed something they couldn't fully understand. "I don't know, but let's find out," Jake said, with a spark of adventure in his eyes. However, a shadow of doubt passed through his mind, as if the house was whispering secrets they were not yet ready to hear. Emma, still holding the photo, felt the unease grow, as if the woman in the image was trying to communicate with her, pulling her into a mystery that was far beyond what they could imagine. Night had silently fallen over the isolated house, and the only sound that could be heard was the rustling of leaves outside, dancing in the breeze. Emma tossed and turned in bed, restless. The moonlight filtered through the curtains, creating shadows that seemed to move, as if the house were alive. In her dreams, a woman with a sad expression watched her. Her deep, dark eyes seemed to pierce her soul. "Emma," the ethereal figure whispered. "Emma." The voice was a distant echo, but it carried an urgency that made her heart race. Awakening with a jolt, Emma gasped, her body covered in cold sweat. The image of the woman was still fresh in her mind, and she sat up in bed, trying to shake off the feeling that she was being watched. The silence of the house felt oppressive, and a shiver ran down her spine. "Jake," she called, but received no answer. He was busy in the living room, immersed in his research, and she wondered if he felt the strangeness that surrounded her. Meanwhile, Jake, in the living room, examined the papers they had found in the safe. The note he had read earlier still weighed on his mind. "You know what happened at 317. He wasn't sure what that meant, but a sense of protection led him to hide the message from Emma. He wanted to prevent her from worrying more than she already was. "Maybe it's just a coincidence," he whispered to himself as he stared at the photo of the sad woman. Her expression unsettled him. When Emma finally got up and joined him, the atmosphere was charged with tension. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, trying to mask the worry in his voice. "I just had a weird nightmare," she replied, sitting down beside him. "The woman in the photo called me by name." Jake frowned, his heart racing. "Maybe it's just your imagination. This house might be making you nervous." She looked at him, a mix of confusion and despair in her eyes. "Jake, it's not just that. I feel like something isn't right here. Sometimes it feels like someone is watching me." He tried to look away, his protective instinct conflicting with the growing anxiety she expressed. "It's just the stress of the renovation. Let's distract ourselves. Do something fun," he suggested, trying to shift the focus. Meanwhile, a strange sound echoed through the house, like a door creaking in the wind, even though all of them were locked. Emma froze, holding Jake's hand. "What was that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jake felt a chill run down his spine as well. "It must be just the wind. The house is old. It makes strange noises." But Emma's expression said otherwise. "It's not just that. I feel like we're being watched." He looked into her eyes, and for a moment, their connection was interrupted by the unease surrounding them. "Let's investigate," he decided, trying to appear steady. "We can look around. Maybe there's a logical explanation." As they walked through the house, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the woman in the photo was there somewhere, watching their movements. She whispered, "Do you think the woman in the photo has something to do with all this, and the clock that stopped at 317? Jake hesitated. "I don't know, but we can find out. Let's focus on what we found in the safe and see if there are more clues." They headed back to the room where the safe was, and Jake felt his heart race at the thought of everything they had discovered. "Don't you think you should tell me about the note?" Emma asked, looking him straight in the eyes. "What are you hiding, Jake?" He looked away, guilt consuming him. "I just wanted to protect you, Emma. I didn't want you to be more scared than you already are." She shook her head, disappointed. "Jake, we are a team. We need to face this together, not hide things from each other." The atmosphere between them was thick with tension, and the line between protection and distrust began to blur. Jake was sitting at a worn wooden table in the local library, surrounded by piles of dusty books that seemed to whisper secrets from the past. He ran his fingers over the yellowed pages, trying to find any clues about the house he and Emma had acquired. The smell of aged paper lingered in the air, mixed with the aroma of wood and dust. He felt like a detective, searching for answers, even though he didn't quite know what questions to ask. "Jake, did you find anything?" Emma appeared behind him, holding a thick book with a worn cover. Her expression was anxious, and Jake realized her curiosity was starting to turn into a shadow of fear. "I found some records of disappearances that happened in the town over the years," Jake replied, not taking his eyes off the book. "It seems that some people vanished without a trace, and there's a list of names that keeps repeating." Emma frowned, a mix of concern and fascination. "And do you think this could have something to do with the woman in the photo we found in the safe?" "Maybe, but I can't understand why these disappearances weren't investigated more thoroughly." "Look here," Jake turned to the page, pointing to a name that stood out. "This last name is the same as yours." "My last name?" Emma leaned in closer to read. This is impossible. I've never heard of anyone here with that last name before." "That's what I'm saying," Jake murmured, feeling a chill run down his spine. "It's like there's something deeper going on, something that connects you to this." Emma felt a shiver. What was supposed to be a fun renovation was turning into something dark and oppressive. I don't like this, Jake. We should stop looking. It's better to forget this and focus on making the house beautiful. But what if we can't? Jake's voice was firm, but there was worry in his eyes. What if this story is somehow linked to you? We need to understand what we are facing. The dialogue between them was heavy and charged with tension. Emma decided to change the subject, trying to shake off the feeling that something was approaching. I'm going to take a look in the basement. There might be more things down there that can help us understand what happened. Jake hesitated but eventually agreed. Be careful, okay? Don't stay down there too long. Emma descended the stairs toward the basement, where the dim light of the flickering bulb illuminated the space. The smell of mold and decaying wood was strong, but she took a deep breath and began to explore. As she rummaged through old boxes and furniture covered with sheets, she found a pile of yellowed letters. One of them caught her attention. "Jake!" she shouted, holding the letter with trembling hands. "Come here, you need to see this." Jake rushed down, and upon seeing Emma's expression, he knew she had found something important. "What is it?" "Look, this letter mentions a pact. It talks about a secret society and how they need to keep certain sacrifices to protect the town." Emma read aloud, her eyes wide. "It says that those who occupy this house have a special role. It's like there's an obligation." "A pact?" Jake repeated, feeling a knot form in his stomach. "What do you mean by sacrifices?" "I don't know, but this is very serious. We need to know more about this society and what it really does." Emma's voice was laden with determination, but Jake felt a wave of fear rising within him. "Don't you think this is too dangerous? What else don't we know?" Jake felt torn, the desire to protect her battling against the need to understand the truth. "I don't know, Jake, but we need to find out. What else can we do?" Emma replied, her voice firm, but a shadow of uncertainty crossed her gaze. The couple stared at each other. The emotional distance between them seemed to grow as the tension of the unknown enveloped them. The discoveries they were making were beginning to shape not only the history of the town, but also the very essence of who they were. And as time passed, the feeling that something was watching them, connecting them to a deeper mystery, became increasingly unavoidable. Jake and Emma decided they needed answers, and the best way to get them was to talk to Mr. Harper, the town elder. He was known for his stories about the past, and although he was seen as a somewhat eccentric figure, there was something in his eyes that indicated he knew more than he let on. With their hearts racing and the atmosphere tense, the couple headed to the man's house, an old, vine-covered structure that seemed to have been forgotten by time. As they approached the front door, Jake hesitated for a moment. "Are you sure we want to do this?" He looked at Emma, who was determined. "We need to know." "Jake, we can't live with this mystery hanging over us," Emma replied, her voice steady but with a slight tremor that betrayed her apprehension. Jake took a deep breath and knocked on the door. The sound echoed, and after a few moments, the door opened with a creak that seemed to tell stories. Mr. Harper, a man with disheveled white hair and piercing eyes, looked at them with an expression that mixed curiosity and suspicion. "Who are you and what do you want?" He spoke in a deep voice, almost like an echo in the walls of the house. "Sorry to bother you, Mr. Harper. We are renovating the house on the hill and found some strange things. We want to know more about the history of the town," Jake said, trying to sound calm. Harper hesitated, his eyes assessing the couple before he slowly nodded. "Come in, but be careful what you wish to know. Not all secrets are meant to be revealed." Inside the house, the air was heavy and filled with the smell of mold and old books. Mr. Harper led them to a small room filled with shelves crammed with books and dusty objects. He sat down in a worn armchair and gestured for them to sit. "Do you know about the secret society that protects this town?" Harper asked, his gaze becoming more intense. "Secret society? We've never heard of that," Emma replied, confused, while Jake exchanged anxious glances with her. "It has existed for generations. They believe that the town needs a sacrifice to remain safe. Sacrifices that, for some reason, have always occurred in the house where you are," Harper said, his voice seeming to echo in their own thoughts. "Sacrifices," Jake repeated, trying to process the information. "What do you mean by that?" Harper leaned forward, the intensity of his gaze almost making Jake feel uncomfortable. There have been people who disappeared, names that have been erased from history, and those who occupy the house have a role in this cycle. Do you really think you found the vault by chance? Emma looked directly into Harper's eyes. What are you saying? That we are connected to this? The elder nodded. You need to understand, there are things that cannot be ignored. The town has a cost, and those who oppose it, well, they end up paying a very high price. What do you mean? What happens to those who oppose? Jake asked, his voice now more tense. Harper hesitated before answering. Stories of people who tried to escape. Some were last seen on nights like this. Others were never found. The fear that permeates this town is fed by those who know the truth, and if you continue to investigate, you may end up like them. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. But we can't just stand still. We need to know the truth about what happened at 317. Harper's expression softened for a moment. The truth can be a burden. Sometimes, it's better to live in ignorance than to face what is hidden. But what about the people who disappeared? And the pact? Jake insisted, his determination growing. Harper sighed and looked out the window, as if the answers were hidden beyond sight. The society will do anything to protect its secrets. If you really want to know, prepare yourselves. The path ahead is filled with shadows, and there are no guarantees that you will return whole. The couple exchanged glances, realizing that exploring the past could cost more than they were willing to pay. Thus, the conversation with Mr. Harper left a sense of urgency and fear hanging in the air, like a storm about to break. Emma explored the dusty attic of the old house, the smell of damp wood and dust enveloping her as she rummaged through boxes full of forgotten objects. Each item seemed to tell a story, but the one that caught her attention the most was a worn leather diary, covered in stains and with pages yellowed by time. As she opened the diary, her heart raced at the sight of her last name written in elegant letters, accompanied by a drawing of a family tree that linked her to a past she had never imagined. "Jake! Come here!" she shouted, her voice echoing through the attic walls. He, who was in the living room, quickly went up the stairs, curious and worried about Emma's urgent tone. "What is it, love?" Jake asked, crossing the attic door and encountering the scene. Emma was holding the diary, her face pale and her eyes wide. "Look at this." She showed the diary, pointing to the last name. "It's my last name. I didn't know there was a connection between my family and this town." Jake approached, examining the diary closely. "But what does this mean? You can't just ignore this. We need to understand what's happening here." "I know," Emma replied, her voice trembling. "But there's something more. The pages talk about a pact. A pact that involves sacrifices. Look here." She turned the pages, showing Jake the excerpts that describe the need for a new sacrifice to keep the town safe. Jake frowned, concern growing inside him. "This is crazy. How can you believe in something like this? We need to get out of here, Emma. This house, this town, all of this is dangerous." "I can't just ignore this, Jake," Emma retorted, her voice now louder. "If this is true, I might be the key to understanding what happened to that woman in the photo. She sacrificed herself and somehow, this is connected to me." Jake stepped back a little, trying to process the information. He didn't know how to deal with the intensity of what Emma was feeling. But what if this story is just a legend? What if you're putting yourself in danger by digging into this? "I need to know," Emma insisted, her determination shining through. "I can't leave this behind. I need to uncover the truth about my family and what happened to this town." Meanwhile, Jake, feeling a growing pressure in his chest, decided he needed to act. He remembered the note he had found, the one that said, "You know what happened at 317. The phrase echoed in his mind like an alarm bell. "Emma, wait a moment. Remember that note I found. It might be related to this. If there's a pact, maybe there's a reason you don't know everything." "Jake, you didn't tell me about this," Emma exclaimed, frustration in her voice. "Why did you hide it? What else do you know?" "I didn't want to worry you more," Jake replied, avoiding her gaze. "But now that I see how much this means to you, we need to talk about it. If the secret society is involved, we need to be careful." Emma crossed her arms, feeling the anxiety in her stomach grow. But what do you suggest? Ignore everything. Keep living as if nothing is happening." No, that's not what I mean. But maybe we should step back from this. Protect you. Protect both of us, Jake said, his voice trembling with the idea of losing Emma to an uncertain fate. I can't do that, Jake. I can't just step back and let my family's story repeat itself with someone else. We need to uncover the truth, even if it means risking our lives, Emma declared, her voice firm but with a hint of vulnerability. Jake closed his eyes for a moment, struggling with his emotions. I just want you to be safe, Emma. That's all that matters to me. He moved closer to her, holding her hands. But if you decide to move forward, I will be by your side. Together, we'll face this. Emma looked at him, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. Thank you, Jake, but I need to understand. I can't let fear stop me from seeking the truth. And so, with the diary in hand and a growing weight in their hearts, the couple prepared to face the mysteries that awaited them, unaware that their choices would bring unimaginable consequences. Jake and Emma walked down the cobblestone street, the sun beginning to set on the horizon, painting the sky orange and purple. The local bank stood before them, an old building with frosted glass windows reflecting the twilight. Emma held the safe deposit box key in her hand, a small, heavy object that seemed to pulse with strange energy. Her heart raced, a mix of anticipation and fear. Are you okay? Jake asked, noticing the tension on her face. If you prefer, we can go back. No, I need to know what's in that box, Emma replied, her voice firm, though her eyes betrayed the unease consuming her. This key belongs to us, Jake. It's like it's calling out to me. Jake hesitated, observing her determination. He felt the weight of the decision increasingly on her shoulders, but he also knew he couldn't stop her from seeking the truth. All right, but let's be cautious. We don't know what we might find in there. As they entered the bank, the smell of old wood and aged paper enveloped them. An employee was behind the counter, with a neutral expression, but his eyes seemed to analyze the couple with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Can I help you? The employee asked, noticing their presence. We're here to open a safety deposit box, Jake informed, trying to keep his voice calm. The key is this one. He extended his hand, the key shining under the bank's interior light. The employee looked at the key, then consulted a ledger. What's the box number? We don't have the number. We just know it's related to a safe we found in an old house in town, Emma explained, feeling a bit nervous mentioning the house. The employee raised an eyebrow, surprised. Very well. I will check if there's any box that matches that description. He turned and disappeared through a door in the back, leaving Jake and Emma exchanging anxious glances. Do you think this is a bad idea? Jake asked, breaking the silence. If the leaders of the secret society are involved, maybe we should stop and leave all this behind, Emma replied, her voice a little louder than she intended. No, Jake. If what we've found so far is true, we can't ignore it. We need to understand what the connection is. The employee returned, holding a small golden key. Here it is, safety deposit box 47. Please follow me. Jake and Emma followed the employee to a metal door, where he inserted the key into the lock and turned it. The sound of metal creaking echoed through the room. The door opened, revealing a small room with metal shelves and several stacked boxes. The employee indicated a specific box. This is yours. Good luck, he said before stepping away, leaving the couple alone. Emma approached the box, her heart pounding in her chest. Are you ready for this? Jake asked, keeping a respectful distance, watching her expression. I don't know if I'm ready, but we need to find out, Emma replied, taking the safety deposit key. If this key opens the box, maybe we can learn more about what happened. Jake took a deep breath. Be careful what you wish for, Emma. Sometimes, the truth can be darker than we imagine. With a hesitant gesture, Emma inserted the key into the safety deposit box lock. The key fit perfectly, and she turned it. The locking mechanism released with a soft click, and a feeling of electricity filled the air. The couple exchanged glances before lifting the lid, revealing a stack of dusty documents and some objects wrapped in fabric. Is this what we found? Jake questioned, once again feeling a wave of apprehension. Let's see, she said, pulling one of the closest papers. As she did, a soft whisper seemed to resonate around them, as if the walls were murmuring long-buried secrets. Did you hear that? Jake asked, looking around. Restless? Yes, Emma replied, her voice almost a whisper. I feel like there's something here. Something that wants to be discovered. She gripped the key more tightly, its weight becoming more and more real. The connection she felt was strong, as if the key were not just an object, but a link between the past and the present. What awaited them inside could change everything they knew about the city and about themselves. Inside the safety deposit box, the atmosphere was heavy and charged with tension. Jake and Emma looked at each other, the fluorescent light flickering as if it were nervous too. Jake, on with sweaty hands, hesitated to open the documents that the secret society had guarded for so long. Emma, on the other hand, had already lost her patience. We have to see what's here. This could be the key to finally understanding what happened, she said, her voice laden with determination, but also with an underlying fear. He took a deep breath, trying to muster courage. And what if it's worse than we imagined? What else could be there? What else could have been hidden from us? Emma shook her head, her eyes burning with a mix of curiosity and desperation. We can't run from this, Jake. The city, our lives, it's all at stake. We need to know. With a swift movement, Jake finally opened the documents. The smell of aged paper and mold filled their nostrils. On the first pages were lists of names, dates, and places, all written in hasty handwriting. Emma leaned in closer, her eyes scanning the lines. Look. Here, these names. They all seem to be people who disappeared in the city. Look at this. Her voice cracked with emotion. Jake furrowed his brow, running his fingers over the names. And there's a date here. March 3rd, 1917. What does that mean? Why did so many people disappear on that day? The woman in the photo? The sad woman? What happened to her? Emma murmured, almost to herself. She felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the date was close to the time when the clock stopped in the safe. Jake, don't you think this could be connected? Maybe. But we need more information. Let's keep going. He pulled more documents from the box, and soon they came across a diary, its pages yellowed and worn. Wait, this seems important, Jake said, highlighting a passage that caught his attention. Read it aloud. Emma requested, her anxiety growing. With each generation, a sacrifice must be made in the name of the city's protection. The choice is difficult, but survival depends on it. Jake read aloud, his expression becoming increasingly grim. Is this from the woman's diary? Was she talking about a sacrifice? Emma stepped back, her hand covering her mouth in shock. This means that the city was built on deaths and sacrifices, and we might be at the center of it all. But this doesn't make sense. Why hasn't anyone talked about this? Why doesn't the city remember? Jake questioned, his voice now a whisper. The weight of the revelation enveloped them like a dense fog. Maybe they don't want us to know. The secret society. They are hiding the truth. And if all this is true, Jake? What if the woman in the photo is one of my ancestors? Emma said, her voice trembling with emotion. Emma, you can't think like that. That's crazy. Jake protested, but the uncertainty in his voice betrayed his own fear. I'm not saying it's right, but it's like something is calling to me. I feel connected to this in some way. Look, there's more here. The pact must be kept, even if it means losing those we love. Jake, this is about us. The two were now immersed in a discovery that left them completely exposed. Emma held the diary tightly, her gaze determined. We need to find out who this woman was. We need to know how she relates to me. Jake felt a knot in his stomach seeing the intensity in Emma's eyes. What if this means you're next? We need to be careful, Emma. I can't treat this as if it's just a legend. If the truth is here, I need to face it. We need to face this together. He hesitated, doubt and fear mixing in his chest. Whatever it is, we will figure it out. But please, be careful. We can't let this tear us apart. Emma nodded, but inside she already felt that the connection to the past was stronger than either of them could imagine. Jake and Emma were sitting at the old wooden kitchen table, the atmosphere heavy with palpable tension. The dim light from the hanging lamp swayed gently, casting dancing shadows on the walls, as if the walls themselves were listening to their conversation. The silence between them was deafening, interrupted only by the soft sound of the wind passing through the cracks of the house. They were both lost in thought, the revelation of the pact still echoing in their minds. "We need to talk about what we found," Jake began, his voice low and hesitant. He looked at Emma, who was absorbed, her gaze fixed on the table. "The pact requires a new sacrifice." Emma lifted her head, her eyes wide. "Are you saying someone has to die?" The incredulity in her voice was mixed with a hint of dread. "How can this be real? We don't know if we should believe any of this." "But the evidence is there, Emma," Jake insisted, running his hand through his hair. "The secret society, the disappearances, all of it is interconnected. And now you are next in line." The last phrase came out as a whisper, but it carried the weight of a sentence. Emma stood up abruptly, making the chair creak. "No, it can't be true. I'm not part of this. I can't be part of this." She was starting to panic, her hands trembling as she moved away from him. "Emma, listen." Jake tried to calm her, but his voice sounded more like a desperate plea. "I don't want you to put yourself in danger. We need to think of a way out of this. And what if there is no way out?" She interrupted, her voice choked. "What if the only way out is to sacrifice myself? I can't do this, Jake. I can't." Emma's gaze was distant, as if she were trying to understand not only what it meant to be next in line, but what it meant for them. "I won't let this happen," Jake declared, his eyes firm as he approached her. "We will find a way. Together. You are not alone in this." He took her hand in his, trying to convey strength and hope. Emma looked down at the floor, her emotions conflicted. And if the only way to break the cycle is this? What if I am the key to saving the town? What would I do if it were the only chance? No, Jake exclaimed, frustration clear in his voice. "You can't think like that. We can't let ourselves be carried away by these desperate ideas. The town is not worth your life, Emma." He squeezed her hand as if wanting to anchor her in that moment. "But what if it's true?" Emma asked, her words coming out in a barely audible whisper. "What if this is the only way to stop all of this? The disappearances, the deaths, and the woman in the photo. What did she sacrifice for us? You can't carry this burden alone. It's not fair." Jake replied, his voice now more intense, almost a plea. "We need to find the leaders of the secret society. We need to confront them and find out if there's an alternative. I won't allow you to become part of this horror." Emma looked into Jake's eyes, seeking some certainty amid the chaos. "But what if they don't want to listen? What if they capture us? Or worse?" "Then we will fight," Jake said with determination. "I won't give up on you. We have to act before it's too late. We can't let them decide our fate." Silence fell again, but now there was a new determination in the air. Emma felt a wave of courage mixed with the fear that paralyzed her. "All right," she finally said, taking a deep breath. "Let's find out the truth together. But I can't promise that I won't get more deeply involved. I feel like I'm connected to this in a way I can't understand." "Then let's unravel this mystery," Jake asserted, a new spark in his eyes. "But please, Emma, don't put yourself at risk. Your life is the most important thing to me, and yours is the most important to me," she replied, now more centered. "Let's face this together, no matter what happens." With one last knowing glance, they prepared for what was to come, ready to confront the darkness that threatened not only their lives, but also the town that, in some way, was tied to the legacy of a dark pact. Emma held the old letter with trembling hands, her eyes filling with tears as her ancestors' words danced in her mind. She had found that message at the bottom of a dusty box, a last desperate attempt from someone who had faced the same dilemma that now presented itself to her. "Break the cycle. Emma," the letter said. "Do not follow the path that was imposed on us. The future is yours, but the price may be high." Jake, who had been watching the scene with an expression that mixed concern and determination, stepped closer. "What did you find, Emma?" His voice sounded tense, as if each syllable was a thread connecting their hopes to what was about to crumble. "It's a letter from my ancestor," she replied, her voice choked. She knew the pact existed and made a choice. She wanted me to break this, but what does it really mean? What does it imply for us? Jake closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the gravity of the situation. He always knew there was something deeper in the revelations they were having, But now, with the revelation of Emma's ancestry, everything seemed even darker. Emma, we need to understand that if you decide to break the pact, there may be consequences, not just for us, but for the entire town. Consequences. Jake, you're not listening. If we continue with this, we will be complicit in a cycle of sacrifices that shouldn't exist. The town cannot continue to live under this shadow, Emma retorted, her voice taking on a tone of fervor. I understand that. But what if the town is really in danger? What if what they said is true? Jake was struggling with his own doubts. He also wanted to free Emma but didn't know how far he should go. We need to find out more. I can't let you do this alone. Emma looked at him. Love and concern mixed in her gaze. What if you can't protect me? What if, in trying to break the pact, we end up putting everyone at risk? The tension between them was palpable, like a thread about to snap. Jake felt a chill run down his spine at the thought of what could happen if they didn't reach an agreement. We need to face the truth no matter what that means. The entire town is involved in this pact, and we cannot ignore that. With a deep sigh, Emma nodded, knowing that the situation required them to unite. Then we need to confront the leaders of the secret society. They have answers, and it's time we demand the truth. Jake paused, his expression becoming more serious. And what if they don't let us leave? What if they decide that you should be the next sacrifice? I won't let that happen, no matter what they say or do. We have to fight, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has been affected by this. She stood up, determination taking over her. As they prepared to face the leaders of the secret society, Jake and Emma felt the weight of what they were about to do. Every step towards the truth was like crossing a minefield, where the wrong choice could lead to devastating consequences. Let's go then. We need to prepare for what's to come, Jake said, opening the door to the outside, where the daylight seemed darker than ever. Emma took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline pulse through her veins. We're in this together, Jake. No matter what happens, I won't leave you behind. Still, we need to be cautious. If the whole town is involved, we don't know who we can trust. The two stepped out, determined to seek the truth, even if it meant confronting what had been hidden for so long. The shadow of the pact still loomed over them, but now there was a new light, the hope that together they could break the curse that imprisoned them. Emma was paralyzed before the dilemma consuming her. The safety deposit box, now opened, had revealed the raw and undeniable truth about her fate, and the understanding of what the pact meant for her hit her like a tidal wave. Jake's gaze, moving between concern and helplessness, reflected the torment they both felt. The walls of the room seemed to close in around them, as if the house itself was aware of the decision about to be made. Emma, you don't have to do this, Jake pleaded, his voice trembling. He stepped closer, trying to touch her arm, but she pulled away, her heart racing and her mind full of conflicting thoughts. There has to be another way. We can leave this place. Leave all of this behind. She shook her head, feeling a mix of fear and determination. Jake, you don't understand. If I don't break the pact, the whole town will suffer. They need a new sacrifice to maintain the protection. The urgency in her voice echoed the gravity of the situation. And I'm next in line. No, you can't do this, Jake exclaimed, his expression contorting in pain. I can't lose you. Let's fight together. Find a way to expose this secret society. What they did is a crime, Emma. We can't let them continue with this. She felt the whispers of ancestral voices, as if her ancestors were urging her, guiding her. The image of the sad woman in the photo haunted her, an echo from the past crying out for freedom. If I don't break the cycle, this will never end. My ancestor sacrificed herself to protect the town, and now it's my turn to choose. I can't let this continue. The decision solidified in her heart, but the cost was too high. Jake looked at her, the internal struggle in his gaze transforming into resolution. Then, if you do this, I'll be by your side. I won't let you face this alone. He stepped closer again, holding her hands, and the energy between them was palpable. But we can't let them have control. We need to do this our way. The two headed to the main room, where the darkness seemed to intensify. The atmosphere was charged, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for the outcome. The old clock on the wall began to chime the hours, and each chime was a reminder of the time slipping away. 3:17, Emma murmured, her eyes fixed on the clock. It's the moment when everything happens. The feeling of inevitability enveloped her, and suddenly she felt there was no more time. Jake, I need to do this now. I can't wait any longer. It's time to break the pact. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision, and looked into his eyes. Promise me you'll stay safe. Promise me you won't let this take you away. I promise. But I'm not going to let you do this alone. Jake's determination was like an anchor, but the fear of losing Emma was a storm raging inside him. Emma walked toward the center of the room, where an improvised altar had been formed by the shadows of the house. With the vault key in hand, she raised it, feeling the pulsing energy emanating from it. The air was thick, and the whispers grew louder, as if the past itself was preparing to be unleashed. I break the pact, she declared, her voice steady but with a tremor of emotion. I refuse to be part of this. May the city face the consequences of its own history, and may I no longer be a pawn in this game. As the words left her mouth, a cold wind swept through the room, as if the house itself was protesting. The clock made its final tick-tock, and as it struck 3:17, a roar echoed. The walls trembled, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to vibrate with the force of an ancient secret being revealed. The light in the room intensified, and for a moment, Emma felt as if all the souls that had been sacrificed were there, watching, waiting. Jake shouted, "Emma, watch out," as a wave of energy enveloped them, and the house began to crumble around them. They looked at each other, a mix of fear and hope in their eyes. The city was changing, but what did that mean for them? The future was uncertain, but together, they could face any storm that came. And as they fled the house, the feeling that not everything had been resolved accompanied them. The echo of their choices reverberated in the air, and with each step they took away, the shadow of the past still followed them, a persistent reminder that even breaking a cycle, new challenges awaited ahead. And so, what did you think of this story? Your opinion is essential for us to improve our content. Write what you thought in the comments and remember to subscribe and like this video. Thank you for your attention, and see you in the next video.